Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's VC Task Force Gary's Picks event for investors and startups. My name is Joel Rosenberg, Director of Business Development and Strategy for VC Task Force. VC Task Force is an organization where the venture community comes together to address critical issues, provide workshops and other events for the benefit of the venture and entrepreneurial communities. VC Task Force provides access to an extensive ecosystem of VCs, corporate VCs, and angel investors. You may ask questions anytime during the event, and time permitting, they will be answered live after today's interview. It is my pleasure to welcome Gary's Picks host, Gary Fowler. Gary is CEO and co-founder of GSD Venture Studios, an award-winning growth stage AI venture studio. Gary is also co-founder of the award-winning AI startup Yva.ai, as well as the investment firm DY Investments. Today, Gary will be interviewing special guest Dirk Hermans, founder and CEO of ESG Explorer. ESG Explorer's B2B SaaS platform leverages data and analytics to provide insights into sustainability goals and actionable recommendations in real time. In addition to being founder and CEO of ESG Explorer, Dirk is an angel investor, startup mentor, and digital transformation expert. Dirk holds a PhD in applied management and decision sciences and is former partner/director EY Tokyo, Deloitte Tokyo, PwC Tokyo, New York, London. Take it away, Gary.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Great having you here, Dirk. June, great to be here. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur investor. In fact, Joe was speaking about Yva.ai. Last week, Yva.ai was acquired. So dreams do come true. And 6 years later, I almost said 5, 6 years later, deal's done. So great to be here. So Dirk, I just want to touch base with you. How in the world did you get to Japan?
I was in New York at the time, and I figured I hadn't been to Asia yet because I'd been working in Europe and also been working in the US. So I explored opportunities to go to Asia, and Japan just made the most sense. And so I went there on a 3-year assignment, and then I ended up staying there for 12 years. I didn't plan that at all, but I liked it a lot, and so I stayed there at the end for 12 years.
What did you like about it?
I like the culture because it has a very deep culture, a lot of history. So it's not like a place that maybe developed over the last 100 years, but it's a very long history, and you can see that everywhere. And also, I like that Japanese people like technology, mostly on the product side. So they really go crazy about new stuff in technology. And also, I like the service there. The service is great, and the food. I would say the food in Tokyo is the best in the world. If you think there's a better place, then let me know. But for me, that was the best place.
So when you go there, how did they treat you? Are you from Switzerland originally, or where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm from Germany, and I mean, you do feel that you are foreigners, so that never goes away. But I mean, it has pros and cons. A con is that sometimes you don't get into the inner circle. A pro is that if there's something that the locals have to do because it's their custom, and something that maybe you don't like, you don't have to do it because you're a foreigner and you can get away with it.
So like what kind of things are culturally different that you were just, from somebody from Germany or Switzerland, you just say, what are they doing?
Yeah, like the working culture is challenging sometimes because they're not always very effective the way they work. They have a culture that you shouldn't leave before your boss. So then if your boss stays until 10 o'clock or midnight, it means that you should stay even you don't have work anymore, which doesn't make sense, right? But if you're a foreigner, you are done with your work at 6, 7, or 8, and then you go home and it's totally fine. And another day when you have more work, obviously you stay longer. But if you just stay there to be seen, then it doesn't make so much sense. But that's the culture there, that you shouldn't go home before your boss.
And what about this thing going out and partying at nighttime and going to the clubs and karaoke? Is that true or not?
Yeah, that's true. That's actually part of the business culture. So you do that with your colleagues and also with your business partners. So first you go to dinner and then you go for drinks, and then before you go home, you actually go to a karaoke, and then yeah, you might stay there until 3 or 4 a.m. So
And
that's
how
quite.
in the world do they get up the next day, Dirk? Because sometimes they have a big commute, right? You have to go on a train. It could take an hour and 2 hours to get home, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, sometimes they just don't sleep a lot and catch up on the weekend. But yeah, that's part of the working culture there.
Are they effective?
Um, as I said, I don't think they're as effective as if I look at the US in terms of how they do business and how quickly they react and make decisions. So I wouldn't say they are as effective as other working cultures because they have those certain customs that they just need to go through, and some of them are not so productive.
Huh, interesting. So who makes the decision in a Japanese corporation? Can a low-level manager or mid-level manager make decisions, or does the top always make them?
Always the top makes the decisions, and that's one aspect that's not great because they tended to promote based on seniority. It's now changing slowly, but many companies still, the most senior person makes the decisions, and there are even some meetings where the most senior person in the room is sleeping in the meeting. That's considered acceptable.
Sleeping in the meeting?
Sleeping in the meeting, yeah, you wouldn't imagine. And then at the end of the meeting, they become awake again, and then they look at him. What does he think? And then he gives some indication. Maybe it could be discussed further. It's a possibility that what is being proposed in the meeting will be accepted, and then everyone will go with that. But yeah, that the most senior person in the room is sleeping.
Well, how in the world can you make a decision if you're sleeping?
Yeah, you don't make good decisions. That's why I said earlier, I don't think it's the most effective working culture. Obviously, you cannot if you don't get everything from the meeting.
So how is it, in the Japanese culture? So you're working in a company, work with PwC. How was it in terms of Ernst and Young? How was it in terms of the accommodations? Did they have is it like here where you get food at lunchtime and breakfast, and if you're with a tech company, or how does it work? Or how do they enchant you and entice you to stay in the office?
Yeah, there's a canteen in the office, so that's discounted. And then another thing is they have doctors and nurses in the office. So if you have some issue, then yeah, you can just go see a doctor in the office and then and stay longer. And yeah, we don't have children, but if you have children, also they have a kind of a nursery in the office, so then you can bring your children there. So these are things that they do to entice you to stay in the office longer.
Wow. And what time does the average Japanese go home at night?
Yeah, maybe on average, I would say between 9 and 10 o'clock at night.
Oh my! And what time do they have to be in the morning?
About 9 a.m. So it's like a 12-hour day on average.
So how do those people that go to the karaoke bars and have drinks, how do they get up, and how can they do it regularly?
Yeah, they just do it somehow. And as I said, they catch up on the weekend, but during the week, they don't do it every day. Maybe they do it once or twice during the week. And yeah, then they don't sleep so much, and then they have to catch up to sleep on the weekend.
And they just stay in the office to be with their manager or their boss, right? They stay there as long as he or she does.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Now, do they have many female entrepreneurs or female executives?
No, they don't. I think that's one of the issues. They always talk about that they want to promote not females becoming entrepreneurs. That would be ideal, but even getting more females into regular work, because many of them are still expected to stay home and look after the children. So they've made some progress on that front. But if you look at entrepreneurs, there are some, but I would say when I've been at events and looking around, I would say 90% of the entrepreneurs are male, which is obviously not a good ratio.
Wow, interesting. So you're over there, so you're over in Japan. Did you learn how to speak Japanese?
Yeah, I learned to some extent. I did not do so well, so I just learned the basics, but I realized that like for my work, I would never be able to become fluent enough to do business in Japanese, so I didn't try. So I just learned it for like a casual meetings and just getting around the city, and for that purpose, it was okay.
And how do they treat the foreigners? Do they treat foreigners? Are they respected or not? Where do they place foreigners?
Um, yeah, you have to differentiate if you're a foreigner coming to visit and if you're a foreigner who's local. If you're a foreigner who's visiting, then they will treat you extremely well. If you are a foreigner who's living there, then I think the bar is higher. But I would still say that yeah, they treated me well and were respectful. But as I said earlier, sometimes you feel like you're not part of the inner circle. You're not really part of the decision-making process, and that can be frustrating.
Well, I mean, the good news is I know a lot of the companies that I've done work with, they pay expat packages. So the expat packages more than make up for the deal. Plus, they get their housing many times paid for.
Yeah, yeah.
So it actually turns in a great deal for the employee.
Yeah, if you get that, you're in a great position. But normally you don't get that for that long. I also got an expat package for the first 3 years, but after that they're saying you've been here for that long now, and then you don't get an expat package anymore. But I still got a better package than the locals, so I got something in between, like a hybrid package. So that's something that that's true that you will get if you're a foreigner, and if you have special skills, then you get a better package.
And what do you do for fun if you're in Tokyo? What do you do on a weekend for fun?
I like hiking, so I go somewhere to hike, or I go cycling in Tokyo. I had a bicycle, and I always went to the river with friends to cycle there. And
Oh, that's great.
yeah, and other than that, I'm really into martial arts, and there's so much you can do in Tokyo. So I'm into Thai boxing, and on the weekend I would go for training there.
Now, are the Japanese very good at martial arts?
Yeah, the Japanese are amazing at martial arts. They're very, very tough, very, very hard to break down. So they are really, really successful in martial arts. And if you look at the Olympics, like judo and other things, I think they're probably the #1 nation because it's so part of their culture that they're so good at it.
Wow. Yeah, they must have in high school. They must have martial arts classes in high school, right? So we
Yeah,
have
they
gym
do.
classes.
They
They
do.
have martial art taekwondo or what is it?
Yeah, yeah,
Endo or whatever. It's like all kinds of stuff. But interesting.
yeah.
So when you were over there as an expat, did you meet? I know when I lived overseas, I got a chance to meet really high level folks that I normally would never meet because I was an expat in the country. Did you have the same experience?
Yeah, I met some high level people, but that was more through my job, not because I was a foreigner, but uh, yeah, if I work with companies where there are foreigners in top management, I was more likely to meet the CEO or the CFO. So for example, there's some companies like Sony, Takeda, or some others where you have foreigners in high management positions, like Nissan as well. And then you get to meet very senior people. So that was one way. And another way was there's something that's called the Tokyo American Club. So that's for foreigners living in Tokyo, not just for Americans, but also for other nationalities.
Mhm.
And they also have Japanese nationals. So it's a mix, and there are many executives, and yeah, sometimes you meet them there. And that was always a very good place for networking. And I went there like a couple of times a week.
You know, it's fascinating, Dirk. How in the world, like these guys and ladies, come home late every night? Man, it's got to put a strain on the relationships, right? I mean, if you do it for years in a row, you wouldn't even have a time to get to know your wife. You'd be so gone so much of the time. Do the relationships suffer? Does it feel? Are they just say, well, this is the way it's going to be, and that's it. I'm part of the program.
Yeah, it's kind of accepted as a culture that men have to work long hours, but it definitely has an impact on the relationships, I think. And um, then, I mean, I've seen some couples that are just living together, but not really as a couple, but it's more like a functional relationship, you know, that they don't spend so much private time together, and yeah, it's not a really good relationship anymore, I think, because of the constraints from the work environment. So I met a few people who spend more time and had a better relationship with their colleagues than with their family, which is obviously not ideal.
Well, I mean, if you're coming home at 10 o'clock every night and you're probably exhausted on the weekends, probably not get up to 11 or 12, that doesn't give you much time to spend with your kids or your
No.
wife, a couple of hours. And then when Sunday comes around, you're getting ready for the next day. I've done this before. It's like crazy, right? Because you're just like, just about the time you're catching up, you're going out and starting full blast again.
Yeah, and it was really interesting the last 1 or 2 years when I was there, when COVID obviously hit, then people were starting to work from home, and then they rediscovered their families again. They were saying like, oh, it was great. I had more time to spend with my family. I went with my wife to the park during lunch break and things like that. So things that they hadn't done before. So COVID has really brought about some change, but I'm not sure if it's going to last, to what extent people can still work from home going forward or have to go back.
I mean, that's it. I mean, a lot of the companies are trying to put the pressure on their families and the employees to, let's come to work. We don't want you working outside the office. But in reality, who wants to go back? Once you get a taste of it, the forbidden fruit, you don't want to go back because you can get a lot of work done and you're not going to be distracted at all.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think some companies also have to suffer the consequences. I read some stories that high-profile people resigned because they were asked to work full-time at the office again, and they said, no, I don't want to do it, and then they resigned.
No, I agree. So tell me a little bit about it. Why did you work? Did you wake up one day and say, I'm going to Colorado? I have not had, some interesting food, or I want to go skiing. Why did you decide in Colorado for your MBA?
Because my university in Germany had an exchange program with the university in Colorado, and I applied for the program to get a scholarship, and I was lucky to get it, and that's how I ended up in Colorado and did my MBA there, and I had a really great time there. We also worked long hours, but we've still found the time to go skiing and do other things. So it was
This
definitely
skiing thing keeps coming up. You keep talking about how much you like skiing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You must be a pretty good skier, are you, Dirk?
I'm an okay skier, I would say. I started quite late. Sometimes I regret I didn't start earlier. I started when I was 16. The really great skiers, they start when they're like 4 or 5, but I think I'm doing okay.
Wow, that's amazing. So they practice skiing at 4 or 5 years old?
Yeah. If you live, for example, in Switzerland and the mountains are nearby, then normally they start 4 or 5 years old, and sometimes they can ski better than they can walk. So it's really quite amazing to see.
That's amazing. Did you ever find a kid passing you on the slope that's 5 or 6 going faster than you and more control?
Yeah, definitely seen that.
Wow, that's amazing. And no fear either. I know when my first time at skiing was, or the second time at skiing was I went down to the mountain in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and I took lessons for 3 days because my friend said, you got to take lessons. Don't do it without taking lessons. I said, okay. So I took lessons. And when I get done, I talk I didn't know the difference between a mogul and a bunny slope and all this. It made zero sense to me. I thought maybe the rabbits on it and the mogul was like, maybe it's like Mongolia. I don't know. I have no idea, but I'll try the mogul. So I went on the mogul. It was my first experience since I was a kid skiing. Let me tell you, when you don't know how to stop, it's not so fun. I was lucky. They taught me the pizza and the French fry. And I remember the pizza. I thought, man, please let this be a pizza. I want a nice, tasty pizza here on this thing. I'm going to do this and I'm going to slow down because it's no fun going 40, 50 miles an hour down the side of a mountain if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's terrific. So tell us a little bit what you're working on at ESG Explorer. And also, then let's talk about, you're an angel investor. You've got Trusted Corporation. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
yeah, I started being an angel investor about 5 years ago, and just making small investments in startups, and I really got into it because I met some founders, and yeah, I really like their perspective because they look at things from different angles, and they have a lot of vision and also determination to execute. So I really like that, and yeah, since then I've made not so many investments, but I think about 5 or 6. And yeah, right now I put that on hold because I'm fully focused on ESG Explorer. How did that come about? As you mentioned, I was a partner with EY in Tokyo before I relocated to Switzerland, and
Well, that's a really good job, right, Dirk? I mean, being a
yeah,
partner is the highest level. And
yeah,
you pay. What made
yeah,
you decide to
yeah.
give it up and say, listen, forget about it. I'm going to do a startup?
Yeah. Most people said I'm crazy to do that, exactly as you said, because you have a high salary, it's a stable job, and I could have just continued to do the same thing for the next 15 years. But I just wasn't happy doing it anymore because I had a vision to apply the latest technology to solve sustainability related problems, and that's what we do with ESG Explorer. And I couldn't do that in the position I was in. I should have been able to, but first of all, you have like different internal interests, like different parties have different interests, and sometimes what you want to do conflicts with what they're trying to do, and then you cannot do it. And also when I saw what the sustainability advisory practice did, it was very old fashioned. You know, they did high level advisory, just many PowerPoints, but no real solutions. So what we do is a data analytics based on actual real time data. So we show companies where they have carbon footprint across the whole value chain. And
Yeah.
then based on that, we make recommendations how they can reduce their carbon footprint. But what I saw in the consultancies was that, first of all, they just do high level advisory, and then they do something they call audits. So what they do is the company takes some numbers from the internal systems and reports them. And then the Big Four will go there and then confirm that it was properly retrieved, and that's all. And obviously that's not very much, right? And that's not good enough to solve the issues that we have right now. I just read today that if we continue along the current track, that we already reached 1.5 degrees global warming in 2026, much earlier than expected.
Yeah.
So the path is even worse than we expected, and we need to have solutions to solve this issue. And the solutions in the market right now are not good enough to solve these issues, and that's why we created our platform to give companies a tool to contribute to solving these issues and lower their carbon footprint sooner than maybe they were planning, because that's really what's needed now.
No, I agree with you. I mean, part of it is just jump starting it. And it sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So now you went to Walden University and you got a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you get your PhD in?
In finance. I got my PhD in finance because that's what I did in the Big Four for most of my career. So I was in traditional finance for almost between 15 and 20 years, and it was interesting. And then I decided to switch to digital transformation because I read many books in my private time about that, and I was really interested in that topic. And then I also wanted to do that as part of my job. So I became an expert in digital transformation about 4 or 5 years ago. And that's how I ended up with the ESG Explorer, connecting those technologies that I learned with the sustainability goals.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, what made you decide to do ESG Explorer?
I gave up a high-paying position, as you said, and I decided that I want to try.
What happens? Did one day you just said to yourself, "I'm not happy with my life. I need to make some changes, and here's what I'm going to."
Yeah. I thought about where I'm in my career, what I want to do with my life, right, with the rest of my career. And I thought, do I continue the same way that I was proceeding before, or do I want to jump into the deep waters and try something myself? Because when I invest in startups, I see other people do it. Most of them are younger than me, but I don't feel so old. You know, I'm still in my 40s. And I think
Well, it's not how old you are, it's what you can deliver, right?
yeah,
How old
exactly,
you are at delivery. So I think the
exactly.
model's shifting because they understand that people that have the intellectual horsepower and the knowledge are people that have, either starting to retire or just retired
Yeah,
because it's that important to our lives. I mean, we don't
yeah,
want to live in a shack somewhere. You want to live into a house that makes sense, but you also got to know how to make money, right,
yeah,
Dirk? It's about, can you do it?
yeah.
So tell us about ESG Explorer. How big is the company today?
Yeah, it's still at the very beginning because I just left EY last August, and we spent the time until now to build the platform that we can deploy. So we have a product that's ready. We are just in the middle of really company formation and doing pre-seed funding. So we are still early in the process, and I've been talking to some VCs, and I would say about 70–80% told me that what we are doing is very interesting, but they want to see some revenues first, but it's good to have the connection. So in terms of investment, I would say I'm definitely still looking for some angels who would be interested in what we are doing. I found a couple, but we still have some space for more. And so if there anyone interested to get involved, I would be happy to explain more and show what we do.
Yeah, so to my audience out there, Dirk is really focused on the whole ESG environment. He's a heck of an entrepreneur, an investor. We haven't talked about it much, but he's been involved in that for quite some time too. And the key is you want to find somebody that can make a change in the universe and help your product or service stand out. It's really important, audience, to enchant people, to get them excited about why you're here, what you can do to help, and more importantly, how everybody can put money in their pocket, right? Whether it's referral agreements or whatever. But those kind of things today are really important, and I applaud you for what you're doing because it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. There are places, I'm sure you've been that are.
Yeah, I could have had it much easier, as I said, but I really want to give this a try and try my hardest. And I have a great network, and we have a great product, so I'm putting 100% into it.
You're doing a great job. So,
Thank you.
closing thoughts and how do people reach you? We're coming to the top of the show.
Yeah, enjoyed the discussion with you as always, and hope some of the viewers found it interesting what we do. And people can reach me on LinkedIn or on email. And the email address is dirk.hermans@esg-explorer.com.
Sounds great. Dirk, thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedule to join my show today, Gary's Picks. Thanks to Joel, June, and the entire VC Task Force team for making it possible. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the host of GSD Picks, Gary's Picks, and it's great to be here. And remember, dreams do come true if you believe. 6 years ago, I started a company, and last Thursday, we sold it. So you can, if you believe and you focus on it, and you have the right connections and network, you too can make it come true. Over to you, Joel.
Excellent. Well, Gary, thanks again for a wonderful interview. Dirk, it was very insightful, very timely information for our viewers. The background information, how you got to where you are today was really, really interesting and compelling.
Thank you.
So wish you all the best. Thanks to everybody for joining today. We look forward to seeing you back here in 2 weeks for the next Gary's Picks event. And until then, everybody stay well, stay healthy, and take care. All the best.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.